Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Mountain Knights. My name is Shahid. Many times you would have seen when people from low altitude visit the high altitude for the purpose of tourist, for the purpose of trekking or mountaineering expedition, they suddenly start facing acute mountain sickness, high altitude effect, of which the most common is headache, vomiting and breathlessness and fatigue. This is due to poor acclimatization or lack of acclimatization. So instead of taking Diamox and other medicines immediately to overcome the effect of altitude, there must be a proper process of acclimatization followed. Now you must be wondering, what is acclimatization? For those who don't know, acclimatization is the process of adjusting yourself to the surrounding. In the process of acclimatization, your body gets time to fight the effect of altitude, adjust to the surroundings accordingly. Now, there are various ways of acclimatizing yourself accordingly. One particular method and widely used is where you acclimatize yourself in 3 stages: stage 1, stage 2 and stage 3. In stage 1, you acclimatize yourself to the altitude of 2700 meters to 3600 meters. In stage 2, from 3600 meters, you acclimatize yourself till 4500 meters. Whereas in stage 3, which is 4000 to 4500 meters and above, the acclimatization effect is low. Instead, the consumption of energy, fatigue is quite high, but you still have to acclimatize accordingly. Now, talking about stage 1, you acclimatize yourself till 7 days. The details of this acclimatization can be viewed by following the link mentioned in the description below. Now, you need to understand, even if you're experienced or non-experienced, even if you had prior exposure to the high altitude or not, first stage is very important. You must adhere to the stage 1 strictly. In case due to any time constraint or expedition constraints, you need to shrink the stage 1 in terms of its days, you can do so by a day or 2. But if you acclimatize yourself in stage 1 well, it is very beneficial for you in stage 2 and stage 3 especially. Proceeding ahead to stage 2, which is from the altitude of 3600 meters to 4500 meters, you acclimatize yourself strictly till day 4. 4 days of acclimatization, but still due to any constraint you got to shrink it. You may do it by a day or 2. Proceeding ahead in stage 3, which starts from 4500 meters and above, the acclimatization process is not very effective. Why? Because the acclimatization happens less and consumption of your energy is more, because now you are at sufficient high altitude which sucks away your energy. You are more vulnerable to the high altitude effect, and you are more vulnerable to get AMS, that is acute mountain sickness, which can be avoided by following certain rules and regulations, which we will talk about maybe in another video. Now coming back to the acclimatization for now. Alright, having followed 3 stages of acclimatization, once you reach the stage 3, as I said, the acclimatization is quite low, whereas the consumption of your energy is more. You still got to acclimatize yourself. You can do that by attaining high altitude and coming back to the lower altitude, for example, which is your camp. This process can be followed by doing frequent load ferries as per the requirement, because when you do load ferry to the next camp, which is a higher camp, you automatically gain the altitude, and when you return back you lose altitude and the acclimatization happens. Now next time when you occupy the camp, the advantage is that you have already had a previous exposure to that altitude, but that does not mean you will have no altitude effect now, because now you have gained more high altitude. The only advantage is that it will become more easier for you to adjust to that altitude because of prior visit to that particular altitude. Whereas on the other hand, the consumption of your energy is more. Your oxygen requirement increases because you are at high altitude, oxygen is less, the atmosphere is thinner, so the fatigue is quite high. Now finally, when you reach summit camp, there are situations where you have to go to the summit camp, dump your load for the load ferry and return back to the lower camp. And there is another situation where you directly push to the summit camp because of the expedition constraints and other such unavoidable circumstances. The advantage of previous situation is where you do a load ferry to the summit camp is that next time when you occupy your summit camp, you already have that much of exposure to the altitude. Hence it will make a little bit easier for you to adjust to that altitude. But remember, now you are at even higher altitude, the oxygen requirement increases more, the fatigue is more, and your vulnerability to AMS is more. Whereas in other situation where you directly push to the summit instead of doing the load ferry, the disadvantage is that you don't have prior exposure of your body to that altitude. Instead, you are reaching to that altitude immediately. Now, summit camp is a place where you would not like to spend much time, be it a 6,000 meter peak or 7,000 meter peak or 8,000 or above meter peak. Once you reach the summit camp, you push yourself ahead towards the summit to attain the 7,000 meters, maybe 8,000 meters or 8,000 plus meters. Now, this is a lot of tedious work. It is a lot about pushing yourself. After all, mountaineering is not easy. It's a myth that mountaineering is easy, but the reality is mountaineering is art of suffering. Alright, with that said, in case you want to understand what is the effect of high altitude on the level of oxygen, the graph over here shows effect of altitude on the level of oxygen. This particular graph is taken from UIA for the reference. In case you want to understand it, go through it, you can follow the link in the description. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope you understand what is the importance of acclimatization and what are the ways of acclimatization. So next time when you think of going to the high altitude and when you plan an expedition, you must take into consideration the proper acclimatization process. If you follow this particular process, and even if you adjust this particular process of acclimatization to an extent, you will be benefited to quite a large extent, and you will be safe from AMS to quite a large extent. Although you are always vulnerable to AMS, and there are ways to avoid AMS in the high altitude, and we will talk about the same in some other video. So you can follow this particular process of acclimatization. In case you like these videos, please like, share and subscribe. In case you want to get a notification of our future videos on similar topics, hit the subscribe button so that you get notified about the videos. In case you want to plan an expedition or a trekking tour with us, you can get in touch with us. In case you want to procure your equipment for yourself, you can get in touch with us for the same. We'll be back soon. Take care. Thank you.